Welcome to GenVisibility interview series. We bring visibility to our genesis, geniuses, genealogy, generosity, and gentleness. You may feel isolated or alone, but you are not. We are a vibrant, thriving, creative, and amazing community. We are adventurers, trendsetters, and trailblazers. If you want to be part of GenVisibility, please submit our form by visiting our website, genvisibility.com. Your voice matters, your story matters, and we cannot wait to see you shine. Hi, Celena.
Hi.
So please introduce yourself.
Okay. My name is Celena Morrison, and I am the current Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of LGBT Affairs here in Philadelphia.
So you are the first openly trans person in a major city office.
Yeah, well, that we know of.
That we know of.
We like to say that. Yes,
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
And you came from doing some really incredible activism and advocacy work in Philadelphia before you started in this office. I would love to hear more about your career, maybe starting with, your childhood, what kind of education, what were you into growing up? What did you study in college? Let's just go, let's start early and see how you became who you became.
Well, when I was young, I was really into fashion. And if you had asked me around the age of 13, 14, I would have told you that I was going to be doing something. I didn't know exactly what it was, but it was going to be something pertaining to fashion. My desire was to be a buyer for a big department store one day. But as I got older, and I started to grow into my personality and who I was, I became more of a people person, and I thought I wanted to be a psychiatrist. But I always kept my desire for fashion and that type of thing. But over the years, my desires of what I wanted to be professionally would change. I think with my experiences. But my first real serious job that I had was in retail, of course, selling clothes. But then after a long stint of different retail jobs, moving from store to store, it wasn't until I moved to Philadelphia and I started doing local truck driving. So I was a truck driver for a really long time. Not a really long time, but for a while. But after, it was during that time that I decided I wanted to do more. And I started to volunteer to do some work with the local nonprofits, which during that volunteer work, I was introduced to lots of different, individuals throughout the nonprofit realm here in Philadelphia. And it was Laura Thornton, who now runs the Morris Home, who I met, and she thought that I might be an interesting person to apply for a position that was becoming available at the Mazzoni Center. So that was really who introduced me to the nonprofit work and started me to think about doing that work, not just in a volunteer position, but, stepping in and actually doing the work.
What is the Mazzoni Center? Don't know if I said that right.
And
also,
the Mazzoni Center.
Yeah. And what was that position that you ended up getting, I'm guessing?
Yeah.
Did you get the position?
Well, yeah. Well, at the time that I met her, the position wasn't really available yet. So it was a couple months came by, and they stayed in contact with me. And the Mazzoni Center is an LGBT organization that they have health providers, all types of trans programming. They have so many different services. I would be all day if I say or try to go. They have case management. The doctors are amazing. The mental health therapists are amazing. They've always done really good work in the community. But yeah, that my first position there was I was an outreach worker, and we would go out to different areas in the city where it was known for trans women to do sex work. And we would go out and educate them about the resources that were available at the Mazzoni Center, um, and provide them with safe sex kits. And so it was really hands-on work, and we were really out there meeting the people where we are. So it was a real hard introduction to not what nonprofit work can really look like when you're on the ground.
And what was your favorite part of it, and what was the hardest part of this job?
Um, my favorite part was feeling like I was giving back and I was doing something that was really helping people, and I was educating, uh, you know, folks that weren't necessarily always in the center city area, because a lot of those folks tend to have those connections to the resources and in the organizations that are available. But we were actually going out to those areas where folks may not know about those resources or have access to those resources. So we were bringing the information about those resources to them.
And I read, tell me if I read that right, that you actually created the first center specifically for trans people. Is that correct? Or the
Well,
first?
I was I I don't like to say that I created, because there was a lot of other folks that worked on that project. But
Together.
when I was the program director at the William Way Community Center, we launched the Arcilla Adams Resource Center within William Way,
Oh,
which
great.
is a resource center that's focused on trans resources, and it was named after two very well known and activists that were here in Philly, and I mean they did some amazing work. Charlene Arcilla and Jackie Adams,
Wow.
and we took their last names, Arcilla Adams, and that was and introduced the resource center to the community. So it was amazing,
Would
and
you
it's an amazing center too.
would you share your age with me?
Sure. I I am 48.
You're not what?
Yeah.
Sorry. That okay. Well, first of all, it makes more sense because I'm like, how are you the director of the affairs, LGBTQ affairs in Philadelphia? We're the director of, all of these programs in the not-for-profit, and you look like you're 31, and you've been a truck
Thank you.
driver, and you
Thank
worked in
you.
retail. I was like, that is, but wow, you look amazing.
Thank you.
So I'm a little jealous because I'm 46 and look
Oh,
like.
you look amazing.
All right.
Skin's glowing. Your yes.
So unless I missed a piece of the this story, and if that's the case, please fill me in. But it sounds like you actually worked your way up to being the director of all these wonderful programs without necessarily getting a college degree.
Yes. Yeah. I did skip that. Yeah, and I actually meant to mention that I
No,
did not. I did
I
not go to college.
right. I love
Um.
that. I love that so much because I really believe that all this emphasis on college, and then you have all these college kids that have no jobs, when in fact with passion and diligence and intelligence, there is so many different routes
Yeah.
to having a meaningful career. But go ahead,
Yeah.
talk to me.
For a really long time, I always, especially when I stepped into this work, I felt that not having that college degree was going to ultimately hold me back. But the first couple years, I was working like elbow to elbow with people that had their college degrees, and just getting closer to them and knowing how they were living. And a lot of them, they had 4 and 5 roommates, and they were working with me. I was making the same amount of money as them, and as time went on, I started to make more money than some
Right.
of them.
And they're in more debts.
Yeah, and a lot of them. So there were times, at different organizations that I partnered with or worked with, that I was asked about my feelings about going back to school, and my answer was always, "I'll consider it if you're going to pay for it."
Yeah.
But at my age, I did not, and seeing, I did not think it just didn't make sense for me at my age to take on that amount of debt when I clearly see around me that it's not guaranteed that you're going to get a job that you're going to be able to just pay that money back. It doesn't
Right.
work that way. And so I was like, you know what? I don't have that huge debt, and I make more money than I had ever. So whatever I was doing, I was like, I'm just going to leave it like this. So
Right.
I'm going to work hard. I'm going to show them with my work ethic, my community, building relationships, and just what I bring to what I know I could do.
Yeah.
And I just fought to prove my worth. And a lot of times I really had to go up against someone's education and outdo those education requirements.
Wow. I mean, I love how much you know your worth, and that when people kind of maybe not put pressure, but kind of like
Mm-hmm.
advocated for you to get that education, your response was, well, yeah, I'll consider it, but will you pay for it? And I feel like it can be really hard for women, and I'm guessing there are additional reason, being a woman of color, being trans, that
Mm-hmm.
responding that way, knowing to stand your ground and what's right for you, can be really difficult in this environment. So I think it's quite wonderful that you were able to do that. And clearly you've rised up to couple directorship. So you've done great without it.
Yeah. I mean, it I don't want to discourage anyone from
No, no, no.
furthering their education. I think it's amazing. It was just that I had got to a point in my life that I was like, you know what, I'm going to make this work, and I'm going to make it work without it. I knew that there were going to be some times that it was going to deter some folks from maybe a position that I was applying for. But I was lucky and blessed that we're living in a time now where, someone's lived experience and the work that they've already put in really goes a long way. So I
Right.
encourage folks that, if you don't think that, going to college is for you, that doesn't mean that you can't have the career that you want,
Right.
you
It
know.
really depends on the career, but also what you have to bring.
And how hard you're willing to work for it.
Right. Right. Right.
you know. So it was
You
it's,
know,
it was important for when those doors were open that I really did the work.
do you see yourself? I mean, I know you talk a lot when asked about intersectionality and how you
Hmm.
bring a lot to the advocacy work, justice work that you're doing,
Hmm.
because of your interest in the many ways identities play together and affect your experience in the world. I'm wondering if you see yourself in the future staying focused on LGBTQ affairs issues, or if you see yourself taking different directions. I was surprised. I mean, not that I should be. I mean, every city in the US has incredible institutional racism going on, but I was surprised the level of the police reaction in Philly and what we've
Yeah.
witnessed recently. And I'm guessing that you coming into this position right when the pandemic starts, and right when the Black Lives Matter rally started, and now with this really scary reaction of the police in the protest, that you have your hands full in
Yeah.
your position. And I'm curious to hear, so not only what you imagine for yourself in the future, but how does that affect your current role, and what are you trying to do in your current position, considering all the stuff that's going on? I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah, when it comes to my position, because of the intersections that I even are affected by, um, it does put a lot more pressure on you when you're doing the work, because there are so many different relationships that need to be fixed.
Right.
There are the relationship between trans women and cis women, Black cis men and Black trans women, the police department and the entire LGBTQ community,
Right.
the police department and the Black community. There are just so many relationships on so many different levels that need to be fixed. So I think anyone doing this work, the work begins with building community and starting to repair these relationships and rebuild that trust. Because no matter how many policies and bills you change, if these relationships aren't built and restored in some cases, it doesn't matter if those things are in
Doesn't
place.
matter. Yep.
Because there's not that level of respect where those boundaries that are set by those policies and those bills and those laws, those boundaries aren't going to be respected.
Yeah.
So I think this work starts with building community.
No, so agree with you. I think that all of the legal approach and legislative approach to fixing problems, are necessary, but they really can't work fully if you don't have trust, and if you don't have community, if you don't build community. And the problem is that it's even harder. It's harder to fix those relationships, and it's harder to build trust. And and it takes years, and people are not very patient. But
absolutely.
I think it's such a beautiful approach.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit about your vision for yourself. Where do you see yourself professionally? And also, what are you doing practically to build those relationships? Sorry, I have so many questions.
Well, one of the things, let me speak to that. What we're doing to build relationship is where we have focused this past year since I stepped into this role. We have focused on amplifying the most marginalized voices. And I know that that's what a lot of organizations, and that seems to be maybe the end thing for some to do. But like I said, we've had community conversations. Unfortunately, the State of the Union had to be canceled because of the regulations and everything around COVID. But this year coming, I will be hiring a new deputy, and one of our first initiatives will be growing the Commission on LGBT Affairs. Once we have a really robust commission that is really representative of the community, I think that the commission will focus a lot on the community engagement and that piece of the work, and the office can really focus on policies and bills and the laws and the things that this office was really created to do.
So you want to have a commission to suggest some action, and then you want to take those actions as okay.
Absolutely.
Because unfortunately, it seems like with a lot of problems, every few years there's a commission in place, and they do a big to-do about reporting and creating a report on what needs to be fixed, and then nothing happens, right? Like it seems like sometimes the government hides themselves.
Yeah. Well, the difference with that is I think we already know what needs to be fixed.
Right.
I don't need a commission in place. Going forward, of course, I think it's important for the commission to stay connected to the community so that we are always in front of what their needs are. Now, as far as what needs to be fixed, we'll know what that is because the everyone who sits on that commission will more than likely have some degree of lived experience with some of the issues that we're up against. So that's where I think we'll kind of combat that. We won't need that lengthy reporting of, and I understand where you're coming from because I've seen it before. I've been on many committees and commissions, and it turns out to be a long, just a bunch of logistical meetings.
Right.
And
it's just
nothing
publicity.
Really comes of it. Yeah, and it's a whole, you spend all the time doing all the logistical work and nothing ever comes from it. So yeah, that's not what we're moving towards. I'm already interested and have been contacted by some folks who are already doing great work in the community and who want to continue that work and would love to be a part of doing that work on this platform.
Right. You want to give city support to programs that are working, initiatives that are working. You want to make sure that your office and the city in general is supporting the right efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So, okay, back to the question about your vision. If you have, I mean, not all of us like have that 5-year plan kind of thing, but is that something?
Well, my plan is to do what I would love to be able to do is focus on work around housing. Housing is such a huge issue here in the city. There are so many homeless LGBT youth that I think I want to do some work, or some really good work with some and partner with some organizations that already are doing that work, which I've always thought was one of the best ways to approach moving the needle when in anything, is partnering with organizations and folks who are already moving the needle, combining the work that my office is doing, what our vision is with theirs, and moving the needle, and partnering is always a good thing.
And so is the idea to have more housing, like, are you talking about young adult or children who are still, would be in group homes or foster homes?
Well, we already do, I think 2, maybe 3 at times, foster parent events a year, where we educate folks about becoming foster parents, becoming foster parents to LGBT youth, and also some of the parents that identify as LGBT. That we do some initiatives around the parents that identify as LGBT.
Cool, that's great. So, I mean, I would love to keep talking about policy, and also here maybe we'll have a chance to hear more about, I guess your bigger vision, your bigger hopes. When you think about the LGBTQ community and specifically the trans community, what are your hopes? Where would you like us to be, in the future?
My hope is that next year, or the year after that, or the year after that, that we do not have to continue to add names to the list of trans women that have been murdered.
Right.
I want to, of course, do the work around providing some more statewide protections. As a city, Philadelphia has some amazing laws in place that protect the LGBTQ community and trans-identified and non-binary folks. But outside of Philadelphia, a lot of those protections don't exist. And one thing that I have a strong belief in, and I would love to focus on the work around changing this particular thing I'm about to mention, is the what is it? It's the law where folks can. I keep forgetting the name of it. It's the law where if let's say a guy murders a trans woman, and he says that he did not know that she identified as trans. He didn't know she was a trans woman. Once he found out, he lost. I don't know why I talk about this law. I mean, this defense all the time, but the name of it is slipping my mind right now. But I know they have a gay panic. It's the gay panic law or the trans panic law. I mean, defense. So the trans panic defense has been used.
Trans panic defense, that's right.
Yes, the trans panic defense has been used quite often to get folks lesser sentences after they've committed some of these horrible crimes, based off of they're saying that they had no idea. Now, as a community member, we, and as a Black trans woman, I know that a lot of times that is not the case.
No.
They knew.
Yeah.
Because of the stigma that is around cis men having relationships with trans women, it's become the go-to defense.
Yeah.
And it is not, there are quite a few places, states that have shot down the use of the panic defense. But Pennsylvania is not one of those places. So that is one thing that I would love to see.
Gotta go.
Yeah, in the future, I would love to see. I would love to be part of the workforce that pushes that work.
Yeah, I've heard a lot from trans women in the different groups that I belong to educate myself that there is definitely even for women that pass kind of a living with fear, constant fear of being identified or being or violence against them. I wonder if you have any advice or just thought to share on that, because I'm guessing you have to live with this fear, and living with fear is really toxic for your well-being. So I'm wondering what you
I think for any trans person, I think for me what helped is just figuring out those little life hacks, those things that help me navigate society. There was a time where when I would ride if I'm on public transportation, if I heard someone laugh or I thought I heard someone talking, whatever I heard, a whisper or anything, I internalized it. I just knew it was about me. I felt like it was about me. So I decided to start wearing headphones so I could tune all of that out and redirect my focus. So by the time I get to my destination, my anxiety is not on 10. When it comes to living with that fear around the people we welcome into our personal spaces, I think it's just a matter of being cautious, being smart, remembering who you are and what we're up against. We have to accept who we are and how we identify, and also know how everyone doesn't think that we deserve to be here, and that's just the reality of it. So I think it's important for, I encourage, young girls that I know that if you're going on a date for the first time with a guy, let someone know, take pictures of license plates and whatever it is that you need to do, because a lot of girls that have been, the vast majority of trans women that have been murdered and assaulted have been assaulted and murdered by people that they know and people that they trusted. And it's usually a guy whose secrets that they held.
Yeah. And so tell me a bit about your current community. Like who are the people that you feel home with, that you feel held by, that you feel, not only safe, but really seen by?
It's such a vast amount of people. My family is very supportive and very loving. I have over the years made some really, really good friends, lasting friendships throughout my work in the nonprofit realm. And then there's just my good girlfriends that I have, and when I just want to let my hair down and I want to gossip and I want to talk about, I want to talk about other people and I want, do all of that stuff. So I think it's important to be able to communicate and connect with people on different levels and just meeting people where they are.
I read about your coming out story and how supportive your mom was, and it was really heartwarming. And I was wondering if we could maybe talk a little bit about, your coming out, when, a bit about when did you know, how did you know, when did you know, how did you come out? And then, kind of from then, when did you transition, etc.?
Okay. Well, I was about 11 years old when, I mean, well, I knew before then, but around 11 years old was when it got to the point where I felt like I didn't want to hide it. So I either needed to tell someone I just needed not to be living like I had to keep this really important thing that I was experiencing a secret.
Yeah.
I just somehow knew that it was a really big part of who I was, and I didn't want to hide it. So I got the nerve. Uh, I was 12 at the time that I called my mom into my room and had that conversation with her, and I told her that not that I think I'm gay, but that I was, and um, she was, her response was, you read it. She just said, don't ever take any crap off of anyone, because of who you are. You just come home and we're always going to suffer the consequences together. And
Oh man.
that just really kind of pushed me to step into like, okay, now I can just really be me. Um, my stepfather was actually really supportive as well. Um, his response was funny. He took me to an amusement park and we hung out that entire day. And on the ride home, he just turned and said, "Well, your mom told me what you told her." And I said, "Oh, okay, here we go." And he said, "I just want to say, if you ever decide to dress like a woman, just don't be out here looking crazy." And that was the conversation. So, um, mental note, don't be looking crazy. But yeah, they were really supportive as I started to, come into who I was, and um, it made a huge difference because on the other hand, I saw a lot of what my friends were going through and what they were dealing with. Um, I hadn't actually thought about actually transitioning until I think I was about 14. And I got my hair braided, and it felt like the most right thing I had ever done. I immediately made the decision to never get another haircut. And I was like, I never want to go to another barber shop or anything. So after I got my hair braided, um, it just gave me that feeling. And then I was like, okay, I don't want to even look at boy shirts or boy pants. I want them. I didn't feel that I was transitioning so much because I tried to stay a little unisex kind of in my mind. But things were I was becoming I wanted, my expression was becoming a lot more feminine. So, yeah, by the time I was in high school, I did not wear boy clothes. Um, but I didn't wear dresses. I didn't wear dresses or anything like that.
And what
But
did you go by he in high school?
yes, I
You
did.
did. Okay.
Yeah, yes, I did. Yes, I did. Um,
And were you exposed to a lot of bullying or kind of threatening, any violence being in high
well,
school?
there was a few times, but I have to be honest. I was a fighter. I was a fighter. I would stand up to folks. I I got into a lot of trouble because if I was bullied or I felt that I was being bullied, I'm gonna follow you and find out where your class is, and because I was really really small.
Right.
So I wasn't a bully, but I would think to myself, and I would sit in my class, and I'm like, that guy's pretty big. You're small. And I got this voice in my head saying, girl, you better get the ups on him because if if I felt threatened. So by the time I come out of class, I'm like, where is he? I'm gonna show him. And I was really I was really confrontational and really like, you don't have to like me, but you're gonna respect me. And that's what I think I drew that from knowing that I had my mom's support, because I would go in the office And I would not stand down when I was in front of the principal. Like, he said this horrible thing to me, and my mother said that he cannot say that to me, and I'm gonna stand by what I said, and I meant everything I said, you know. So it was really good to be able to stand up for myself, and I thank my mom for that.
And God bless her. Can I ask you, I hear a lot of echo when I speak. Is it really going through your headphones or is it going through your computer, the sound? Are you
Through my
hearing,
headphones.
you're definitely hearing me on your headphones?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that is so wonderful. And I am sure that your mom's support made a difference, but I also think it's you. It's like your spirit because, you know, I know just from my own 3 children that, you know, some of them with or without support are just going to keep a low profile because that's just, you know, they're just not the kind to step up and you know, there is definitely a temperament part of that, you know, and I'm,
Absolutely.
you know, I love your fighting temperament. Absolutely. I love it. So all right, so go ahead and tell me when did you then transition in terms of your pronouns and
Yeah, I transitioned. I think it was I was 20. I think I was about to turn 22, and I actually had been incarcerated for a short time, and my best friend during that time had began her transition, and you know, she just felt like this was the most that, you know, her, she had stepped into who she really was. And so just hearing that, just, it was like, that's it. I think that's what I need to do. So um, when I came home, I immediately started to transition. Um, it was at a time in North Carolina where it was not that easy to even get a doctor to see you, let alone prescribe hormone replacement therapy. So one of my first lessons was learning how to get my prescriptions uh, using other methods, um, you know, under the table prescriptions, fraudulent prescriptions, having someone call in a prescription, and it was a lot. So it was a lot of us being on our hormone replacement therapy for a little while, then not being able to have it for a little while, and then we're finding a means to have it, and it was, you know, it was tough.
you know, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me that the stages of your transition, that some of it is really because growing up in North Carolina, and perhaps from just, you know, it not being today, but, you know, a few decades ago, that a couple decades ago, your exposure, you didn't just know people that
Yeah,
were transitioning early. You didn't necessarily know even about hormone blockers. It might not even have been in on your radar.
yeah,
So how are
absolutely.
you, right?
Yeah. I had no knowledge of any of those things. Even when I really came to Philly, I still had no knowledge of a lot of things that were available, and what I should have known about, what I felt like I should have known about. Um, it wasn't until I I had a primary care physician, but it was not a primary care physician that was really trans specific or inclusive, to say the least. Uh, but once I started to volunteer at the nonprofit and started to educate myself about what was available, I was just so shocked and so just I was so overwhelmed with what resources were available for someone like me. And this was all prior to me doing any nonprofit work.
Wow.
So when I stepped into that work, I was completely blinded by just my amazement of what was, you know, in my head, like this gold mine that had been here all along.
Wow. So um I'm sorry. I'm guessing it contributed to your passion in sharing that gold mine with others. I'm also
Mm-hmm.
wondering if you feel grief or regrets that you weren't able to transition earlier, maybe even in your childhood. How do you feel about that?
Um, I think sometimes many of us um, we think our life would have been better if we transitioned sooner. Um, I not so much. I don't think about that so much because I I wasn't I wasn't in a space where I really didn't identify or understand who I was. I kind of relished in who I was at the time, and I enjoyed who I was. I was happy with who I was. There was a part of me that felt like there was something missing, but I wouldn't say that I was unhappy before my transition. You
Do
know.
you do you still, that's wonderful. Do you still in some way identify as a gay trans woman because you had that gay identity for so long? Is that something that you still relish in, even though
No, because I think at the time I identified as gay because that's what I understood.
right,
I
okay.
had no knowledge or understanding of what it meant to be trans. Even during the time where I had actually met women who identified as trans, I really still had no understanding of what that term meant.
Hmm.
So, um, for me, my in the beginning, of my transition, I just identified as a girl, as a woman. My friends were women. We didn't even really use the term trans.
Yeah.
You know, it was so when I came to Philadelphia, it was a real learning process when I actually started to do the work. I would misgender folks. I would say the wrong thing, and coming from a trans-identified person, I was looked at like, ooh, what is, But I would also have to I had no problem reminding folks, I'm from the South. This is new to me. I think it's amazing and I want to learn and I'm going to get it right, but this is new to me. So bear with me,
Yeah,
you know?
that's great. We all have to learn right now.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I keep having questions and then forgetting them instantly because another three questions comes up, and you'll have to stop me when we've gone too long. But I could keep going. So from on camera, right? You look like an amazingly beautiful woman to me. Um,
Thank you.
did you ever do you choose to pass in some circumstances? Do you not want to pass? Like, you are an activist who is public about being trans. I'm sure that carries a lot of weight sometime, a lot of
Yeah.
being on the other side of a lot of anger and fear from other people. What yeah, it's a little bit about the choice of being out versus the choice of passing, and some of your thoughts around that. I know everybody's going to have a
Yeah.
different choice around that, and all of it
Yeah.
is fine. But
Well, let me say this first. Passing is never a choice. Um, no one has any control over whether you pass or not. No
right,
matter what I do, no matter how prepared I think I am, I can't control it. But it's a conversation that is very two-sided because folks that are considered unpassable have always thought that navigating life is easy for those that are passable. And the truth of it is, those that are passable oftentimes envy those that aren't because there's not the unknown or the having to divulge your identity all the time. Sometimes it's just there's comfort in them just knowing,
right,
you know. So I think it's a very two-sided.
yeah,
Um, Now I have been considered past, and I've passed in many situations. Um, but and it's something and if I had to choose, being passable and not being passable. Of course, for me, I want to be passable, but that's because my transition. That's what my transition looks like.
Right.
You know, transition. Everyone's transitions look different.
Yeah.
I transitioned along. You know, when there was a time where when we transitioned, we weren't even identifying as trans. You know, we didn't label ourselves TS Celena, or and that's okay, because some people do, and that's how some people identify. I transitioned because I wanted to navigate and live my life as, well, closer to living as a cis woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And are you dating men then?
Yes, I actually am separated from my husband of 15 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that, or not sorry, but I'm sure
Well,
it's a
I
bit
mean, we
it's a
have
bit.
a we have a great relationship. We're still see each other from time, often, and so it's great.
So you're back in the dating scene, perhaps.
Um, I went on a couple dates. It's just that but it took a couple days for me to realize that I'm just not there. The way that people date now is just, I don't know. I think I need to evolve a little more, and I'm just not into meeting new guys, on social media, and I'm a little untrusting,
Hmm.
so it makes it a little difficult. And the history of the violence against trans women makes it really scary.
It is very
You
scary.
know, yeah,
It's trusting is not easy for anyone, and
absolutely,
then you add the reality of the violence, and it's just it is
yeah,
definitely a hurdle. But
yeah,
hopefully, in all of the work that you're doing, you have many other ways to meeting people that will be clear or
yeah,
safe.
yeah. I think my hope is that me and my husband work it out, but the main thing is maintaining our friendship, and that's what means the most to both of us. So
Yeah.
we're fine.
Before we wrap up, do you mind maybe talking a little bit about, and I'm looking at the time, yeah, we're like almost an hour in. So, one of the things that I'm sure a lot of young people who are going to listen to this are considering, and maybe people are very clear about what they want in their future, but a lot of people, these decisions are big decisions.
Mhm.
Would you share if you've decided, and again, you can say no right now at any time, but what medical transition have you chosen to do, and depending on the answer to that, what are your thoughts and experience around that?
Now, I don't really like to talk about my personal
Sure, I
things that
appreciate
I've
that.
done, but I because of that, I like to encourage folks to not allow what someone else's transition looks like to dictate what they feel like they need.
Hmm.
Um, because your girlfriend had cheek implants, or she had breast implants, or butt implants, or she got her hips done, you know, that doesn't mean that you have to do that. There was a lot of, you know, I surrounded myself when I was young by older trans women. I was most of the trans women I were around were older than me, so I was fortunate enough to be able to see some of the struggles that they had uh, long before I was, set up to deal with those types of things. And one of the things that I saw that some of them struggled with was the health issues around having silicone injections in order to have, their body conformed and stuff. And that kept me from doing any of that black market uh, silicone injections that happen at a hotel, in a seedy hotel, or anything like that, because of I was actually able to see the flip side
Yeah.
of what they go through, and some of them have gone through when it doesn't go well. So I'm thankful that I didn't do any of that. So I have actually done workshops around the dangers of free floating silicone injection. And I've always encouraged folks not to do it. I did it early. Um, I did what I did do, and I felt like I should have started my hormones earlier, but you know, like I said, everyone's transition looks different, and so now earlier when I thought I wanted to do some of that stuff, after like now we look at like some of the long term effects. I'm really glad that I didn't. So.
Well, I have one last question, and then if you have
Mhm.
anything else you want to share. And this is a question that maybe in a year or a month I'll be like, why did I even ask that question? That is such an ignorant question. But as a cis straight woman, I see the LGBTQ community as being just incredible. I just not only admire it, but I just enjoy so much of what comes out of that community. And, I think belonging to that community is a true privilege. It's something very special. But I see also, obviously, all of the hardship that associate not because you are, whatever your identity, but because of
Mhm.
the violence, the discrimination, etc. So I'm wondering, if for you your trans identity is something that is front and center, something that you're proud of, and it doesn't have to be a dichotomy, right? Something that you cherish, or if it's more a necessity in this culture and time of discrimination, and strict binary, and if you actually would love to just nothing more than not have to talk and belong to a trans, you know what I'm saying? Like, this
Yeah,
is just a thing that I have to do because it's there in the outside, but in the inside I'm just a woman, and I would love nothing more than never having to discuss, and both could be true. I'm just curious.
that's absolutely. I would agree that for me that is a lot of how I feel a lot of times is that because I don't always lead with my trans identity. Professionally, there are times that it's important for me to do that. Um, but in those cases that I do that, or that I'm asked to do that, or any trans woman is asked to do that, or trans man that is asked to do that, I think it's important to also understand that there's um, a level of danger when someone is on these platforms and they're outing themselves. Um, it was something that I struggled with when I stepped into this role, because although I had been very vocal, I had done a lot of work, I was still very, very strategic about how I showed up, where I told my story, where how my story was shared, and just what parts of my story that I did share. Um, when I started working with the mayor's office, it was the very first time that um, I had openly announced that I was trans identified in an interview. There were lots of people who know it was no secret, but it wasn't something, and has never been something that I stand on the rooftops to yell, because I am a woman. My
Right.
trans identity is just a small piece of who I am. You
Yeah.
know, I think this culture of trans identified and non binary folks, this culture of expecting folks to just unpack all of their baggage upon their first meeting with folks is just unrealistic, you
Right.
know. And it's unfair,
And
you
wrong,
know.
right? I was going to say it's wrong. Nobody else is expected to
Yeah,
spill out their most private
exactly. No one's showing
information.
up saying, "Hey, I am a cis man and I have a," you know.
Yeah. And I've done this and that and the other, and my
Yeah,
childhood. I was like, no,
yeah,
nobody's
absolutely.
asking
And
all the
my
medical.
name used to be this, and
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, not acceptable, and hopefully we can correct that.
yeah.
Well, I enjoyed so much talking with you, and I hope you feel like this was a respectful
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
opportunity, and I appreciate you willing to make yourself available in that way for the sake of the young people that will visit, and maybe not only young people that will visit and listen to this interview. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
I guess, this is a really difficult time for so many of us. And this pandemic has really, amplified a lot of the things that the LGBTQ community was already dealing with on a daily basis. So it's made those things much harder. So I just want to encourage folks to uplift each other, support each other, use all the resources that are available to you, take advantage of them, and just, stay connected to people, because I know I think a lot of the cities are going back into lockdowns and to, having those restrictions, and folks are going to be instructed to. So having those connections, whether just phone calls and Zoom meetings or whatever, just staying connected to people so that those feelings are completely lost, because isolation can be really, really bad, on top of everything else that we're dealing with. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your work. Thank you for your work professionally and otherwise. And thank you for your time today.
All right. Thank you for having me. It was lovely talking to you.
All right. Thanks, Celena.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you for being here and for listening. We hope you are feeling inspired to share your own experience and reality. If you like this video, please share it. You can follow us and hear about our latest video on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And remember that you are valued, you are loved, we see you.